What if the biggest reason most people stay average has nothing to do with intelligence, talent, or luck? What if the real difference between the people who quietly rise to the top and those who remain stuck is something far less obvious, something hidden in plain sight? Most people spend their entire lives reacting. They react to criticism, to praise, to setbacks, to emotions, and to the opinions of others. They believe they're making independent decisions, but in reality, they're being pushed around by forces they barely understand. Psychology has shown time and time again that human behavior is often driven by invisible patterns, yet very few people ever stop long enough to see those patterns for what they are. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. While most people were obsessed with how the world should work, he focused on how it actually works. That's precisely why his ideas remain so powerful today. They're uncomfortable, they're controversial, and for many people, they're impossible to ignore once understood. Because the moment someone begins to see human nature clearly, they start noticing things that others miss completely. Here's the paradox. Becoming smarter than 90% of people doesn't necessarily require learning more information. Often, it requires removing illusions. It means seeing reality without the filters of wishful thinking, emotional impulses, or social conditioning. It means understanding power dynamics, developing emotional mastery, and cultivating strategic thinking while everyone else is distracted by short-term emotions and instant gratification. In this video, you'll discover a set of principles that can completely change the way you see people, opportunities, conflict, success, and even yourself. Some of these ideas may challenge beliefs you've held for years. Others may explain experiences you've never fully understood. But if you stay until the end, you'll begin to see why a small group of people consistently make better decisions, avoid common traps, and move through life with an entirely different level of awareness. The question is, are you ready to see reality as it truly is? Most people move through life like passengers on a train they never chose. They wake up, react to situations, get pulled by emotions, and call it freedom. What they don't realize is that every emotional reaction hands control to someone or something else. In psychology, this is more common than most would like to admit. A harsh comment ruins an entire day. A compliment creates instant confidence, and suddenly their direction depends on external forces. The person who begins to notice this pattern is already taking the first step toward a different level of awareness. A wise observer eventually notices a fascinating difference between two kinds of people. One person is constantly responding to events, while another quietly studies them. One acts like a piece being moved across a chessboard, while the other starts understanding the rules of the game itself. Machiavelli often pointed toward this distinction without romanticizing reality. The world doesn't reward people for good intentions alone. It rewards those who understand how human nature actually works and who can navigate it without illusions clouding their judgment. Here's something that surprises many people. Reality doesn't care about personal preferences. Someone may believe life should always be fair, that honesty should always be rewarded, or that effort automatically guarantees success. Yet experience often tells a different story. The person who refuses to see this spends years frustrated, wondering why things don't work as expected. The one who accepts reality as it is gains something much more valuable than comfort, clarity. And clarity creates the foundation for strategic thinking. Think about a workplace, a family gathering, or even a group of friends. Often, the person influencing the room isn't the loudest or the most qualified. Instead, it's the individual who understands motivations, incentives, fears, and desires. Human nature leaves clues everywhere. People frequently reveal what truly matters to them through their actions rather than their words. Once someone learns to observe behavior instead of promises, an entirely different picture begins to emerge. It's almost like switching from black and white television to high-definition color. Many people resist this lesson because it feels uncomfortable at first. They want to believe everyone is driven by noble intentions. Yet self-interest quietly shapes countless decisions every single day. That doesn't make people evil. It makes them human. Understanding this principle allows a person to stop taking things personally and start seeing patterns more objectively. In psychology, this shift often marks the beginning of emotional mastery because emotional reactions become replaced with understanding. An old mentor once compared life to standing in the middle of a busy marketplace. Most people are distracted by the noise, the excitement, and the drama happening around them. A few individuals step back and study the movement of the crowd. They notice who leads, who follows, who gains influence, and who loses it. That's where the deeper lessons of power dynamics begin to reveal themselves. And once a person learns to truly observe instead of merely react, an unexpected advantage starts to appear. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. The moment a conversation pauses, they rush to fill the empty space with explanations, justifications, or nervous words. What they don't realize is that silence often reveals more than speaking ever could. In psychology, silence creates a subtle pressure that encourages others to expose their thoughts, emotions, and intentions. The person who remains calm during those moments gains access to information that others willingly give away. That's why silence is rarely weakness. More often than not, it's hidden strength. Imagine two people negotiating. One talks constantly, trying to convince, impress, and control the conversation. The other listens carefully, speaking only when necessary. Funny enough, the quieter person usually learns far more. Every sentence contains clues about fears, desires, insecurities, and priorities. Human nature has a hard time hiding itself for long. People often reveal exactly who they are when they feel the need to keep talking. The observer doesn't have to force answers. The answers eventually arrive on their own. Machiavelli understood something many still overlook today. Information is leverage. The more a person knows, the more intelligently they can act. Yet many people sabotage themselves by speaking too soon. They reveal plans before they're ready, announce goals before they're accomplished, and explain every move as if seeking permission from the world. Strategic thinking works differently. It values observation before action. A seed grows underground long before anyone sees the tree. Consider someone who constantly announces every new project on social media. They receive praise, encouragement, and attention immediately. Yet often, the motivation slowly fades because the reward arrived before the work was done. Meanwhile, another person works quietly behind the scenes, making progress without broadcasting every step. Months later, results appear seemingly out of nowhere. Of course, they didn't appear overnight. They were simply developed in silence, while others were busy talking about what they planned to do. Another advantage of silence is unpredictability. People feel comfortable when they can easily categorize someone. They want to know exactly how a person thinks, reacts, and behaves. Once that happens, manipulation becomes easier. But the individual who doesn't constantly reveal every thought becomes harder to read. In the world of power dynamics, predictability can become a vulnerability. The less others can accurately predict someone's next move, the more carefully they must treat that person. One lesson repeated by wise strategists throughout history is surprisingly simple. Observe longer than feels comfortable. Listen beyond the obvious words. Notice tone, timing, body language, and patterns. Emotional mastery often begins with resisting the urge to react immediately. Instead of rushing to speak, explain, defend, or justify, the observer waits. And during that waiting, something remarkable happens. The deeper layers of human nature start becoming visible, revealing a skill that leads directly into the next challenge. Learning when to show the world different sides of oneself and when to keep them hidden. Before we go any further, there's something you should know. If what you've heard so far has opened your eyes to how people really think, react, and reveal themselves, then you'll want to read the Silent Influence Code. Inside, you'll discover the psychological signals that shape how people perceive, trust, and respond to you. Drawing from timeless Machiavellian principles and modern psychology, it's a practical guide to understanding human nature, mastering silent influence, and moving through social situations with greater awareness and control. If that sounds valuable to you, click the link in the pinned comment and get access to it now. It may completely change the way you see every interaction from this point forward. Now, let's continue, because understanding people is only the beginning. The next step is learning how to adapt strategically in any environment. Many people grow up believing that being authentic means showing every thought, every emotion, and every intention at all times. It sounds noble, but reality is often more complicated. Imagine walking into every room with your diary open for everyone to read. Most people wouldn't do that, yet they unknowingly expose themselves in similar ways every day. Psychology teaches that different environments require different responses. The person who understands this doesn't become fake, they become adaptable. And adaptability has always been one of the most valuable forms of intelligence. Machiavelli observed that survival and influence often belong to those who can adjust without losing themselves. A tree that refuses to bend during a storm may break, while one that moves with the wind remains standing. Human nature responds differently depending on context. The behavior that earns respect in one environment may create problems in another. Someone who learns to read the room gains an advantage that most people completely overlook. They're no longer reacting blindly. They're responding strategically. One of the most misunderstood ideas is strategic vulnerability. Many assume vulnerability means revealing everything about themselves. In reality, wise people reveal selectively. They share enough to create trust, but not enough to surrender leverage. Think about a skilled poker player. He doesn't hide every card, nor does he place his entire hand face up on the table. He reveals only what serves the situation. In power dynamics, this balance often separates those who are respected from those who are easily exploited. Consider a young professional entering a competitive workplace. If he immediately reveals every insecurity, frustration, and fear, some people may sympathize, but others may quietly use that information against him. On the other hand, if he presents himself as completely invincible, he may appear arrogant and disconnected. The wiser approach lies somewhere in the middle. Strategic thinking allows him to show confidence while remaining relatable, strength while remaining approachable. It's a delicate balance, but one that becomes easier with practice. This is where the famous lesson of being both lion and fox becomes relevant. The lion represents strength, courage, and presence. The fox represents awareness, flexibility, and intelligence. Relying only on strength creates unnecessary battles. Relying only on cleverness invites challenges from stronger opponents. Human nature tends to respect those who can combine both qualities. Emotional mastery plays a critical role here because emotions often push people toward extremes when balance is what the situation truly requires. Social camouflage is not about deception for its own sake. It's about understanding that every environment operates according to visible and invisible rules. A person who understands those rules can navigate difficult situations with far less resistance. They know when to speak boldly, when to remain reserved, when to challenge, and when to observe. And as they become more skilled at adaptation, another reality begins to emerge. No matter how carefully someone moves through life, sooner or later they will encounter opposition, and that opposition may become one of their greatest teachers. Most people spend a huge part of their lives trying to avoid conflict. They want everyone to like them, agree with them, and approve of their choices. It sounds peaceful, but there's a hidden problem. The moment someone begins pursuing meaningful goals, opposition becomes inevitable. Human nature guarantees it. Different ambitions create different interests, and different interests often collide. The person who understands this stops viewing conflict as a sign that something is wrong. Instead, they start recognizing it as evidence that they're actually moving somewhere. One of the biggest surprises in psychology is that enemies can sometimes be more useful than friends. Friends often support, encourage, and comfort. Enemies, however, expose weaknesses. They notice flaws, mistakes, and blind spots that supportive people may ignore. Of course, not every criticism deserves attention. Some criticism comes from envy or resentment, but occasionally, hidden inside a harsh comment is a lesson worth learning. Wise individuals separate the emotion from the information and ask a simple question: what can this teach me? Machiavelli understood that resistance creates strength in the same way weight creates muscle. Nobody develops physical strength by lifting feathers. Growth requires pressure. A person who faces no opposition often becomes complacent, careless, and fragile. Then life delivers an unexpected challenge, and everything falls apart. Strategic thinking encourages a different approach. Instead of fearing adversity, it treats adversity as training. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to sharpen judgment, discipline, and awareness. Think about someone who launches a business, starts a YouTube channel, or pursues an unusual dream. At first, criticism arrives from every direction. Some people mock the effort. Others predict failure. A few may even secretly hope it doesn't work. The emotional reaction is usually frustration or self-doubt. Yet, the people who eventually succeed often use that resistance as fuel. Emotional mastery allows them to transform discouragement into determination. What was meant to stop them becomes the very thing that pushes them forward. An interesting truth about power dynamics is that opponents often reveal valuable information. They expose weaknesses in strategies, assumptions, and plans. In a strange way, they force improvement. A person who never encounters resistance may never discover where their vulnerabilities exist. Human nature tends to seek comfort, but comfort rarely teaches the lessons necessary for growth. Pressure, on the other hand, has a way of revealing character. It shows who someone truly is when circumstances stop being convenient. Over time, the wise individual stops asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begins asking, "How can this make me stronger?" That small shift changes everything. Conflict becomes a classroom rather than a punishment. Challenges become opportunities rather than threats. And once a person learns to transform opposition into strength, they begin developing patience, a quality that becomes essential when pursuing goals that require years rather than days. Because the greatest rewards rarely belong to those who want everything immediately. One of the greatest traps in modern life is the obsession with immediate results. People want success by next month, wealth by next year, and mastery without the years of practice that usually come before it. Everywhere they look, they're surrounded by promises of shortcuts. Human nature naturally gravitates toward what feels good right now, even when that choice creates problems later. The challenge is that immediate pleasure often disguises itself as progress. A person can feel busy, excited, and productive while quietly moving nowhere at all. Machiavelli understood that power is rarely built through impulsive decisions. Strong foundations take time. A castle isn't constructed by placing a single stone. It's built by placing thousands of stones in the right order. Strategic thinking follows the same principle. The wise person focuses less on today's applause and more on tomorrow's position. While others become distracted by quick rewards, they continue investing in skills, relationships, knowledge, and opportunities that may not produce visible results for months or even years. Psychology repeatedly shows that delayed gratification is one of the strongest predictors of long-term success. Yet many people underestimate how powerful this principle really is. Imagine two individuals receiving the same opportunity. One seeks the fastest reward available. The other sacrifices temporary comfort for future gain. At first, their paths may appear similar. Sometimes, the first person even seems ahead. But as time passes, the gap grows wider and wider until the difference becomes impossible to ignore. A simple example can be found in personal development. One person spends every evening chasing distractions, scrolling endlessly, consuming entertainment, and escaping discomfort. Another spends even 30 minutes a day, learning, reading, building, or practicing. The difference feels insignificant at first. A week passes, and nothing changes. A month passes, and still very little appears different. But after several years, the results look almost unbelievable. Small actions, repeated consistently, often outperform dramatic bursts of motivation. Power dynamics reward patience more than most people realize. The individual who constantly seeks immediate validation becomes dependent on it. They need praise, recognition, and quick victories to stay motivated. The person playing the long game operates differently. Their motivation comes from vision rather than applause. Emotional mastery allows them to tolerate temporary discomfort without abandoning their mission. They understand that meaningful achievements often grow quietly long before they become visible to the world. This perspective changes everything. Wealth becomes a long-term project. Influence becomes a long-term project. Relationships become a long-term project, and personal transformation becomes a long-term project. Human nature tempts people to focus on what is urgent instead of what is important. Yet those who resist that temptation gradually build advantages that compound year after year, and as patience grows stronger, another lesson begins to emerge, perhaps the most important one of all. Because even the best strategy can collapse if a person cannot master what happens inside their own mind and emotions. Many people spend their lives trying to earn approval from everyone around them. They adjust their opinions, suppress their needs, and ignore their boundaries in exchange for acceptance. At first, this seems like the path to peace. Yet over time, it often creates frustration, resentment, and exhaustion. Psychology reveals a simple truth. A person who constantly sacrifices themselves to please others eventually loses clarity about who they are. The wisest individuals understand that caring about others is important, but abandoning themselves in the process comes at a very high cost. Machiavelli recognized that rational self-interest is not selfishness, it's survival. Imagine being on an airplane during an emergency. The instruction is always the same. Secure your own oxygen mask before helping others. Not because helping others is unimportant, but because a person who cannot breathe is unable to assist anyone else. Human nature sometimes confuses self-respect with selfishness. In reality, strong boundaries often create healthier relationships because people understand exactly where they stand. One of the most valuable lessons in power dynamics is understanding the difference between being liked and being respected. Approval is often temporary, because it depends on other people's changing opinions. Respect tends to be more stable because it comes from consistency, competence, and self-control. Someone who constantly seeks approval becomes easy to influence. They fear disappointing others. They fear rejection. They fear criticism. Strategic thinking encourages a different path, one where decisions are guided by principles rather than by the desire to please everyone. Life inevitably delivers disappointment, failure, betrayal, and loss. The question is not whether these experiences will happen, but what a person will do with them when they arrive. Emotional mastery transforms pain into wisdom instead of bitterness. It transforms anger into action instead of destruction. It transforms setbacks into fuel instead of excuses. Think about a blacksmith forging steel. The metal becomes stronger because it passes through intense heat. Human beings often develop in a remarkably similar way. A practical example can be seen whenever someone faces rejection. One person internalizes it and concludes they're not good enough. Another studies the experience, extracts the lesson, improves their approach, and continues moving forward. The event is the same, but the interpretation changes everything. Psychology consistently demonstrates that meaning shapes emotional outcomes. The people who become resilient are not necessarily those who suffer less. They are often the ones who learn how to transform suffering into growth. Eventually, a person reaches a stage where manipulation becomes much more difficult. They no longer react impulsively to praise, criticism, fear, or pressure. They understand human nature, practice strategic thinking, and maintain control over their internal world. They become calm when others expect panic, patient when others rush, and focused when others become distracted. This is where true freedom begins. Not freedom from challenges, but freedom from being controlled by them. The individual who reaches this point starts seeing the world through entirely different eyes. Now the question is no longer whether these principles work. The real question is whether you'll actually apply them. Most people will hear these ideas, nod in agreement, and then go right back to living the same way they always have. They'll continue reacting instead of observing. They'll keep chasing approval instead of earning respect. They'll pursue short-term comfort instead of long-term growth. And without realizing it, they'll remain pieces on the board while someone else learns how to play the game. But that doesn't have to be your story. Imagine where your life could be a year from now if you genuinely practiced strategic thinking every day. Imagine understanding human nature so clearly that manipulation becomes obvious. Imagine developing such strong emotional mastery that criticism no longer controls your emotions, setbacks no longer stop your progress, and uncertainty no longer shakes your confidence. Machiavelli's greatest lesson was never about controlling others. It was about first gaining control over yourself. Because the person who masters their own mind gains an advantage that circumstances, critics, and competitors struggle to take away. So take a moment and ask yourself honestly, which of these lessons challenged you the most? Where in your life are you still acting emotionally instead of strategically? Are you building a future or simply reacting to the present? And perhaps the most important question of all, are you living according to reality or according to comforting illusions? Share your answer in the comments below. I'd genuinely like to know which lesson had the biggest impact on you. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue learning about psychology, Machiavelli, human nature, power dynamics, emotional mastery, and strategic thinking, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, and activate notifications so you never miss the next lesson. Remember, the moment you begin to see the game clearly is the moment you stop being controlled by it.